doing this. My first time streaming. Normally my missions are more boots on the ground sort of deal. But hopefully this is working, and tonight we're going to be reading Fall of Reach, a Halo novel. Let me go ahead and grab the book. I'll be right back. Alright, hopefully Turbo will let us know if everything's working okay. Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, like I said, normally I'm more of a boots on the ground kind of Spartan, but today we'll be reading a mission briefing titled Halo, The Fall of Reach by Eric Nylund. We're going to skip the foreword, but we'll go ahead and read the prologue. Triumph. Let's see if you can see my data pad. Tactical, of course. Prologue. 0500 hours, February 12th, 2535, military calendar. Lambda Serpentine System, Jericho 7, Theater of Operations. Contact. All teams stand by. Enemy contact. My position. The chief knew there were more probably than he... My apologies. The chief knew there were probably more than 100 of them. Motion sensors were off the scale. He wanted to see them for himself, though. His eyes, training, made that lesson clear. Machines break, eyes don't. The 4 Spartans that composed Blue Team covered his back, standing absolutely silent and immobile in their Mjolnir combat armor. Someone had once commented that they looked like Greek war gods in their armor, but his Spartans were far more effective and ruthless than Homer's gods had ever been. He snaked the fiber-optic probe up and over the 3-meter-high stone ridge. When it was in place, the chief linked it to his helmet's heads-up display. On the other side, he saw a valley with eroded rock walls and a river meandering through it. Encamped along the banks as far as he could see were grunts. The Covenant used these stocky aliens as cannon fodder. They stood a meter tall and wore armored environmental suits that replicated the atmosphere of their frozen homeworld. They reminded the chief of biped dogs, not only in appearance, but because their speech, even with the new translation software, was an odd combination of high-pitched squeaks, guttural barks, and growls. They were about as smart as dogs, too, but what they lacked in brain power, they made up for in sheer tenacity. He had seen them hurl themselves at their enemies until the ground piled high with their corpses, and their opponents had depleted their ammunition. These grunts were unusually well armed. Needlers, plasma pistols, and there were 4 stationary plasma cannons. Those could be a problem. One other problem. There were easily 1,000 of them. This operation had to go off without a hitch. Blue Team's mission was to draw out the Covenant's rear guard and let Red Team slip through in the confusion. Red Team would then plant a Havoc tactical nuke. When the Covenant ship landed, dropped its shields, and started to unload its troops, they'd get a 30-megaton surprise. The chief detached the optics and took a step back from the rock wall. He passed the tactical information along to his team over a secure comm channel. 4 of us, Blue 2 whispered over the link. And 1,000 of them? Piss poor odds for the little guys. Blue 2, the chief said. I want you up with those jackhammer launchers. Take out the cannons and soften the rest of them. Blue 3 and 5, you follow me up. We're on crowd control. Blue 4, you get the welcome mat ready. Understood? 4 blue lights winked on his heads-up display as a team acknowledged the orders. On my mark, the chief crouched and readied himself. Mark. Blue team leaped gracefully atop the ridge, 3 meters straight up. There were no sounds as the half-ton of Mjolnir armor and Spartan landed on the limestone. She hefted one launcher and ran along the ridge. She was the fastest Spartan on the chief's team. He was confident those grunts wouldn't be able to track her for the 3 seconds she'd be exposed. In quick succession, Blue 2 emptied both of the jackhammer's tubes, dropped one launcher, and then fired the other rockets just as fast. The shells streaked into the grunt's formation and detonated. One of the stationary guns flipped over, engulfed in the blast, and the gunner was flung to the ground. She jetched the launcher, jumped down, rolled once, and was back on her feet, running at top speed to the fallback point. The chief, Blue 3, and Blue 5 leaped to the top of the ridge. The chief switched to infrared to cut through the clouds and dust and propellant exhaust just in time to see the second salvo of jackhammers strike their targets. Sorry, I have a guest here that's bothering me. Shoo, cat. Get out of here. Okay, you're fine there. Sorry for the extra camera motions. 2 consecutive blossoms of flash, fire, and thunder decimated the front ranks of the grunt guards, and most importantly, turned the last of the plasma cannons into the smoldering wreckage. The chief and the others opened fire with their MA-5B assault rifles, a full automatic spray of 15 rounds per second. Armor-piercing bullets tore into the aliens, breaching their environmental suits and sparking the methane tanks they carried. Gounts of flames traced wild arcs as the wounded grunts ran in confusion and pain. Finally, the grunts realized what was happening and where this attack was coming from. They regrouped and charged en masse. An earthquake vibration coursed through the ground and shook the porous stone beneath the chief's boots. The 3 Spartans exhausted their AP clips and then in unison switched to shredder rounds. They fired into the tide of creatures as they surged forward. Line after line of them dropped. Scores more just trampled their fallen comrades. Explosive needles bounced off the chief's armors, detonating as they hit the ground. He saw the flash of plasma bolt, sidestepped, and heard the air crackle where he had stood a split second before. Inbound Covenant air support, Blue 4 reported over the comlink. ETA is 2 minutes, Chief. Roger that, he said. Blue 3 and 5, maintain fire for 5 seconds, then fall back. Mark. Their status lights winked once, acknowledging his order. The grunts were 3 meters from the wall. The chief tossed 2 grenades. He, Blue 3, and Blue 5 stepped backwards off the ridge, landed, spun, and ran. 2 dull thumps reverberated through the ground. The squeals and barks of the incoming grunts, however, drowned out the noise of the exploding grenades. The chief and his team sprinted up the half-kilometer sandstone slope in 32 seconds flat. The hill ended abruptly, a sheer drop-off of 200 meters straight into the ocean. Blue 4's voice cracked over the comm channel. Welcome mat is landed out, Chief. Welcome mat is laid out, Chief. Ready when you are. The grunts looked into a living carpet of steel blue skin, claws, and chrome weapons. Some ran on all 4s up the slope. They barked and howled, baying off the Spartans' blood. Roll out the carpet, the chief told Blue 4. The hill exploded. Plumes of pulverized sandstone and fire and smoke hurtled skyward. The Spartans had buried a spiderweb pattern of Lotus anti-tank mines earlier that morning. Sand and bits of metal pinged off the chief's helmet. The chief and his team opened fire again, picking off the remaining grunts that were still alive and struggling to stand. His motion detector flashed a warning. There were incoming projectiles high at 2 o'clock, velocities over 100 kilometers per hour. 5 Covenant Banshees flyers appeared over the ridge. "New contacts! All teams, open fire!" he barked. The Spartans, without hesitation, fired on the alien flyers. Bullet hits pinged from the flyers' chitinous armor. It would take a very lucky shot to take out the anti-grav pods at the end of the craft's stubby, meter-long wings. The fire got the aliens' attention, however. Lances of fire slashed from the Banshee's gun ports. The chief drove and rolled to his feet. Sandstone exploded where he had stood only an instant before. Globules of molten glass sprayed over the Spartans. The Banshees screamed over their heads. They banked sharply for another pass. "Blue 3, Blue 5, Theta, maneuver," the chief called out. Blue 3 and 5 gave him the thumbs-up signal. They regrouped at the edge of the cliff and clipped onto the steel cables that dangled down the length of the rock wall. "Did you set up the fogasses with fire or shrapnel?" the chief asked. "Both," Blue 3 replied. "Good." The chief grabbed the detonators. "Cover me." The fogasses were never meant to take down flying targets. The Spartans had put them there to mop up the grunts. In the field, though, you had to improvise. Another tenet of their training: adapt or die. The Banshees formed into a flying V and swooped towards them, almost brushing the ground. The Spartans opened fire. Bolts of superheated plasma from the Banshees punctuated the air. The chief dodged to the right, then to the left. He ducked. Their aim was getting better. The Banshees were 100 meters away, then 50 meters. Their plasma weapons might recycle fast enough to get another shot, and at this range, the chief wouldn't be dodging. The Spartans jumped backwards off the cliff. Guns still blazing, the chief jumped too and hit the detonators. The 10 fogasses, each a steel barrel filled with napalm and spent AP and shredded casings, had been buried a few meters from the edge of the cliff, their mouths angled up at 30 degrees. When the grenades at the bottom of the barrels exploded, it made one hell of a barbecue out of anything that got in their way. The Spartans slammed into the side of the cliff. The steel cables they were attached to twanged taut. A wave of heat and pressure washed over them. A heartbeat later, 5 flaming Banshees hurled over their heads, leaving thick trails of black smoke as they arced into the water. They splashed down, then vanished beneath the emerald waves. The Spartans hung there a moment, waiting and watching with their assault rifles trained on the water. No survivors surfaced. They rappelled down to the beach and rendezvoused with Blue 2 and 4. "Red Team reports mission objective achieved, Chief," Blue 2 said. "They send their compliments." "It's hardly going to balance the scales," Blue 3 muttered, and kicked the sand. "Not like those grunts where they slaughtered the 105th Drop Jet Platoon. They should suffer just as much as those guys did." The chief had nothing to say to that. It wasn't his job to make things suffer. He was just here to win battles, whatever it took. "Blue 2, the chief said. "Get me an uplink." "Aye, aye." She patched him into the SATCOM system. "Mission accomplished, Captain DeBlanc," the chief reported. "Enemy neutralized." "Excellent news," the captain said. He sighed and added, "But we're pulling you out, Chief." "We're just getting warmed up down there, sir." "Well, it's a different story up here. Move out for pickup ASAP." "Understood, sir." The chief killed the uplink. He told his team, "The party's over, Spartans. Dust off in 15. They jogged, double quick, up the 10-kilometer of the beach and returned to their dropship, a Pelican, scuffed and dented from 3 days' hard fighting. They boarded and the ship's engines whined to life. Blue 2 took off her helmet and scratched the stubble of her brown hair. "It's a shame to leave this place," she said, and leaned against the porthole. "There are so few left." The chief stood by her and glanced out as they lifted into the air. There were wide rolling plains of palm grass, the green expanse of ocean, a wispy band of clouds in the sky, and setting red suns. "There will be other places to fight for," he said. "Will there?" she whispered. The Pelican ascended rapidly through the atmosphere. The sky darkened, and soon only stars surrounded them. In orbit there were dozens of frigates, destroyers, and 2 massive carriers. Every ship had carbon scoring and holes peppering their hulls. They were all maneuvering to break orbit. They docked in the port bay of the UNSC destroyer Resolute. Despite being surrounded by 2 meters of titanium, a battle plate, and an array of modern weapons, the chief preferred to have his feet on the ground, with real gravity, and real atmosphere to breathe. A place where he was in control, where his life wasn't held in the hands of an anonymous pilot. A ship just wasn't home. The battlefield was. The chief rode the elevator to the bridge to make his report, taking advantage of the momentary respite to read Red Team's after-action report in his display. As predicted, the Spartans of Red, Blue, and Green teams, augmenting 3 divisions of the battle-hardened UNSC Marines, had stalled a Covenant ground advance. Casualty figures were still coming in, but on the ground, at least, the aliens' force had been completely stonewalled. A moment later, the lift doors parted, and he stepped in the rubberized deck. He snapped a crisp salute to Captain DeBlanc. "Sir, reporting as ordered." The junior bridge officers took a step back from the chief. They weren't used to seeing a Spartan in full Mjolnir armor up close. Most line troops had never even seen a Spartan. The ghostly, iridescent green of the armor plates and the matte black layers underneath made him look gladiator, part machine, or perhaps to the bridge crew he looked as alien as the Covenant. The view screen showed stars, and Jericho 7's 4 silver moons. In extreme range, a small constellation of stars drifted closer. The captain waved the chief closer as he stared at the cluster of stars and the rest of the battle group. "It's happening again." "Request permission to remain on the bridge, sir," the chief said. I want to see it this time, sir." The captain hung his head, looking wary. He glanced at the Master Chief with haunted eyes. "Very well, Chief. After all, you've been through to save Jericho 7. We owe you that. We're only 30 million kilometers out system, though. Not half as far as I'd like to be." He turned to the nav officer. "Bearing 120, prepare our exit vector." He turned to face the chief. "We'll stay to watch, but if those bastards so much as twitch in our direction, we're jumping the hell out of here." "Understood, sir. Thank you." Resolute's engines rumbled and the ship moved on. 3 dozen Covenant ships, big ones, destroyers and cruisers, winked into view in the system. They were sleek, looking more like sharks than starcraft. Their lateral lines brightened with plasma, then discharged and rained fire down upon Jericho 7. The chief watched for an hour and didn't move a muscle. The planet's lakes, rivers, and oceans vaporized. By tomorrow, the atmosphere would boil away too. Fields and forests were glassy smooth and glowing red hot in patches. Where there had been a paradise, only hell remained. "Make ready to jump clear of the system," the captain ordered. The chief continued to watch, his face grim. There had been 10 years of this. The vast network of human colonies whittled down to a handful of strongholds by a merciless, implacable enemy. The chief had killed the enemy on the ground, shot them, stabbed them, and broke them with his own hands. On the ground, the Spartans always won. The problem was the Spartans couldn't take their fight into space. Every minor victory on the ground turned into a major defeat in orbit. Soon there would be no more colonies, no human settlements, and nowhere left to run. That was the prologue. Section 1, Revile. with a picture of vigilance. I'm going to take a quick break just to grab a drink and make sure my guard dog was okay, if you heard him earlier. I'll be right back. And my microphone's still on, so hello guys. Spartans need nourishment too. Sorry I haven't been able to watch the feed. Hopefully Turbo is keeping you guys entertained and I'm doing okay. I'm not used to this kind of thing, public speaking and all that. Like I said, normally out there on the front lines. But I've always wanted to hear about this mission here, the Fall of Reach. It was written, almost 20 years ago now, and I've never read it, so I'm pretty excited to be able to share it with you guys. I have one more chapter to read, and then every night at 6 after this, different Spartan or soldier will be reading another chapter or two for about a half hour. All right, thank you. Appreciate the encouragement speech. All right. Chapter 1. 0430 hours, August 17th, 2517. Military calendar. Slipstream space. Unknown coordinates near Eridanus? Star system. Lieutenant Junior Grade Jacob Keyes awoke. Dull red light filled his blurry vision, and he choked up the slime in his lungs and throat. Sit up, Lieutenant Keyes, a disembodied male voice said. Sit. Take a deep breath and cough, sir. You need to clear the bronchial surfactant. Lieutenant Keyes pushed himself up, peeling his back off the form-fitting gel bed. Wisps of fog overflowed from the cryogenic tube as he clumsily climbed out. He sat on a nearby bench, tried to inhale, and doubled over, coughing until a long string of clear fluid flowed from his open mouth. He sat up, drew his first full breath in 2 weeks. He tasted his lips and almost gagged. The cryo-inhalant was specially designed to be regurgitated and swallowed, replacing nutrients lost in the deep sleep. No matter how they changed the formula, though, it always tasted like lime-flavored mucus. Status, Torin? Are we under attack? Negative, sir, the ship's AI replied. Status normal. We will enter normal space near the Iridius system in 45 minutes. Eridanus. I'm going to say Eridanus system. Lieutenant Keyes coughed again. Good. Thank you, Torin. You're welcome, Lieutenant. Eridanus was on the border of the outer colonies. It was just far enough off the beaten path for pirates to be lurking, waiting to capture a diplomatic shuttle like the Han. This ship wouldn't last long in a space action. They should have an escort. He didn't understand why they had been sent alone, but junior lieutenants didn't question orders, especially when those orders came from fleet headquarters on Planet Reach. Wake-up protocols dictated that he inspect the rest of the crew to make sure no one had run into problems reviving. He looked around the sleep chamber. Rows of stainless steel lockers and showers, a medical pod for emergency resurrections, and 40 cryogenic tubes, all empty except the one to his left. The other person on the Han was the civilian specialist, Dr. Halsey. Keyes had been ordered to protect her at all costs, pilot the ship, and generally stay the hell out of her way. They might as well have been asking him to hold her hand. This wasn't a military mission, it was a babysitting mission. Someone at Fleet Command must have him on their blacklist. The cover of Dr. Halsey's tube hummed open. Mists rippled out as she sat up, coughing. Her pale skin made her look like a ghost in the fog. Matted locks of dark hair clung to her neck. She didn't look much older than him. And she was lovely. Not beautiful, but definitely a striking woman. For a civilian, anyway. Her blue eyes fixed upon the lieutenant, and she looked him over. "We must be the Aerodonus system," she said. Lieutenant Keyes almost saluted reflexively, but checked the motion. "Yes, doctor." His face reddened, and he looked away from her slender body. He had drilled in cryogenic recovery a dozen times at the academy. He'd seen his fellow officers naked before, men and women, but Dr. Halsey was a civilian. She didn't know what protocols applied. Lieutenant Keyes got up and went to her. "Can I help you?" She swung her legs out of the tube and climbed out. "I'm fine, Lieutenant. Get cleaned up and dressed." She brushed past him and strode to the showers. "Hurry, we have important work to do." Lieutenant Keyes stood straighter. "Aye, aye, ma'am." With that brief encounter, their roles and the rules of their conduct crystallized. Civilian or not, like it or not, Lieutenant Keyes understood that Dr. Halsey was in charge. The bridge of the Han was abundant of space for a vessel of its size. That is, it had all of the maneuvering room of a walk-in closet. A freshly showered, shaved, and uniformed Lieutenant Keyes pulled himself into the room and sealed the pressure door behind him. Every surface of the bridge was covered with monitors and screens. The wall on his left was a single large, semi-curved view screen, dark for the moment because there was nothing in the visible spectrum to see in slip space. Behind him was the Han's spinning center section, containing the mess, the rec room, and the sleep chambers. There was no gravity on the bridge. However, the diplomatic shuttle had been designed for the comfort of its passengers, not the crew. It didn't seem to bother Dr. Halsey. Strapped into the navigator's couch, she wore a white jumpsuit that matched her pale skin, and had tied her dark hair into a simple, elegant knot. Her fingers danced across 4 keypads, tapping in commands. "Welcome, Lieutenant," she said without looking up. "Please have a seat at the communication station and monitor the channels when we enter normal space. If there's no much as a squeak on non-standard frequencies, I want to know instantly." He drifted to the communication station and strapped himself down. "Torin?" she asked. "Awaiting your orders, Dr. Halsey," the ship's AI replied. "Give me astrogation maps of the system." "Online, Dr. Halsey." "Are there any planets currently aligned with our entry trajectory and Uranus 2? I want to pick up a gravitational boost so we can move in system ASAP." "Calculating now, Dr. Hal. And can we have some music?" Piano Concerto No. 3, I think." "Understood, Doctor. And a pre-burn warm-up cycle for the fusion engines." "Yes, Doctor. And some spinning the hand's cylindrical carousel section. We may need the power." Working, she eased back. The music started and she sighed. "Thank you, Torin." "You're welcome, Dr. Halsey. Entering normal space in 5 minutes, plus or minus 3 minutes." Lieutenant Keyes shot the doctor an admiring glance. He was impressed. Few people could put a shipboard AI through its paces so rigorously as to cause a detectable pause. She turned to face him. "Yes, Lieutenant? You have a question?" He composed himself and pulled his uniform jacket taut. "I was curious about our mission, ma'am. I assume we are to reconnoiter something in the system? But why send a shuttle rather than a prowler or a corvette? And why just the two of us? She blinked and smiled. A fairly accurate assumption and analysis, Lieutenant. This is a reconnaissance mission of sorts. We are here to observe a child. The first of many, I hope. A child? A 6-year-old male, to be precise. She waved her hand. It may help if you think of this purely as a UNSC-funded sociology study. Every trace of a smile evaporated from her lips. Which is precisely what you are to tell anyone who asks. Is that understood, Lieutenant? Yes, Doctor. Keyes frowned, retrieved his grandfather's pipe from his pocket, and turned it over. He couldn't smoke the thing. Igniting a combustible on the flight deck was against every major regulation on a UNSC space vehicle. But sometimes he just fiddled with it and chewed on it, which helped him think. He stuck it back into his pocket and decided to push the issue and find out more. With all due respect, Dr. Halsey, this sector of space is dangerous. With a sudden declaration, they entered normal space. The main view screen flickered and a million stars snapped into focus. The hand drove toward a cloud-swirled gas giant dead ahead. Stand by for burn, Dr. Halsey announced. On my mark, Torin. Lieutenant Keyes tightened his harness. 3, 2, 1, mark. The ship rumbled and sped faster towards the gas giant. The pull of the harness increased around the lieutenant's chest, making breathing difficult. They accelerated for 77 seconds. The storms of the gas giant grew larger on the view screen when the hand arced up and away from its surface. Eridanus drifted into the center of the screen and filled the bridge with warm orange light. Gravity boost complete, Torin chimed. ETA to Eridanus, 45 minutes, 3 seconds. Well done, Dr. Halsey said. She unlocked her harness and floated free, stretching. I hate cryosleep, she said. It leaves one so cramped. As I was saying before, Doctor, this system is dangerous. She gracefully spun to face him, halted, her momentum with a hand on the bulkhead. Oh yes, I know how dangerous this system is. It has a colorful history. Rebel insurrection in 2494, beaten down by the UNSC 2 years later at the cost of 4 destroyers. She thought a moment, then added, I don't believe the Office of Naval Intelligence ever found their base in the asteroid field. And since there have been organized raids and scattered piracy active nearby, one might conclude, as Oni clearly has, that the remnants of the original rebel faction are still active. Is that what you were worried about? Yes, the lieutenant replied. He swallowed, his mouth suddenly dry, but he refused to be cowed by the doctor, by a civilian. I need hardly remind you that it's my job to worry about your security. She knew more than he did, much more, but about the Uranus system, and she obviously had contacts in the intelligence community. Keyes had never even seen an Oni spook. To be the best of his knowledge anyway, mainline Navy personnel had elevated such agents to near mythological status. Whatever else he thought of Dr. Halsey, he would assume from now on that she knew more than she knew what she was doing. Dr. Halsey stretched once more and then strapped herself back onto the navigation couch. Speaking of pirates, she said, with her back now to him, weren't you supposed to be monitoring communication channels for the illegal signals, just in case someone undergoes interest in a lone, unescorted diplomatic shuttle? Lieutenant Keyes cursed himself for his momentary lapse and snapped to. He scanned all frequencies and had Torin cross-check their authentication codes. All signs verified, he reported. No pirate transmissions detected. Continue to monitor them, please. An awkward 30-minute passed. Dr. Halsey was content to read reports on the navigational screen and kept her back to him. Lieutenant Keyes finally cleared his throat. May I speak candidly, Doctor? You don't need my permission, she said. By all means, speak candidly, Lieutenant. You've been doing a fine job so far. Under normal circumstances, among normal officers, that last remark would have been insubordination, or worse, a rebuke. But he let it pass. Normal military protocol seemed to have been jettisoned on this flight. You said you were here to observe a child. He shook his head dubiously. If this is a cover for real military intelligence work, then, to tell the truth, there are better qualified officers for this mission. I graduated from the UNSC OCS only 7 weeks ago. My orders had me rotated to the Magellan. Those orders were rescinded, ma'am. She turned and scrutinized him with icy blue eyes. Go on, Lieutenant. He reached for his pipe, but then checked the motion. She would probably think it a silly habit. If this is an intel op, he said, then I don't understand why I'm here at all. She leaned forward. Then, Lieutenant, I shall be equally candid. Something deep inside Lieutenant Keyes told him he would regret hearing whatever Dr. Halsey had to say. He ignored the feeling. He wanted to know the truth. Go ahead, Doctor. Her slight smile returned. You are here because Vice Admiral Stanforth, head of Section 3 of UNSC Military Intelligence Division, refused to lend me his shuttle without at least one UNSC officer aboard, even though he knows damn well that I can pilot this bucket by myself. So I picked one UNSC officer, you. She tapped her lower lip thoughtfully and added, You see, I've read your file, Lieutenant, all of it. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about, she rolled her eyes. You don't lie well. Don't insult me by trying again. Lieutenant Keyes swallowed. Then why me? Especially if you've seen my record. I chose you precisely because of your record. Because of the incident in your second year as OCS. 14 ensigns killed. You were wounded and spent 2 months in rehabilitation. Plasma burns are particularly painful, I understand. He rubbed his hands together. Yes. The lieutenant responsible for your CO on the training mission. You refused to testify against him, despite overwhelming evidence and the testimony of his fellow officers and friends. Yes. They told the Board of Review the secret the lieutenant had entrusted to you all, that he was going to test his new theory to make slipstream jumps more accurate. He was wrong, and you all paid for his eagerness and poor mathematics. Lieutenant Keyes studied his hands and had the feeling of falling inward. Dr. Halsey's voice sounded distant. Yes. Despite continuing pressure, you never testified. They threatened to demote you, charge you with insubordination and refusing a direct order, even discharging you from the Navy. Your fellow officer candidates testified, though. The review board had all the evidence they needed to court-martial your CO. They put you on a report and dropped all further disciplinary actions. He said nothing. His head was low. That is why you are here, Lieutenant, because you have an ability that is exceedingly rare in the military. You can keep a secret. She drew in a long breath and added, You may have to keep many secrets after this mission is over. He glanced up. There was a strange look in her eyes. Pity? That caught him off guard, and he looked away again. But he felt better than he had since OCS. Someone trusted him again. I think, she said, that you would rather be on the Magellan, fighting and dying on the frontier. No, he caught the lie as he said it. Stopped. Corrected himself. Yes, the UNSC needs every man and woman patrolling the outer colonies. Between the raiders and insurrection, it's a wonder it hasn't fallen apart. Indeed, Lieutenant, ever since we left Earth's gravity, we've been fighting another for every cubic centimeter of vacuum. From Mars to the Jovan moons, to the Hydra system massacres, and onto the 100 brushfire wars in the outer colonies, it has always been on the brink of falling apart. That's why we're here, to observe one child, he said. What difference a child could make. One of her eyebrows arched. This child could be more useful to the UNSC than a fleet of destroyers, 1,000 junior grade lieutenants, or even me. In the end, the child may be the only thing that makes any difference. Approaching Eridanus 2, Torrin informed them. Plot an astroviric vector for the Luxus spaceport, Dr. Alsey ordered. Lieutenant Keyes, make ready to land. So ends Chapter 1. Definitely an intense story brewing there. Well, thank you guys for joining me. PerniciousDuke, signing off. Wishing you all a safe night or cryo sleep. And hope to see you again tomorrow. Be well. I'll stay on for a little bit if you guys have questions or want to say hi. Hey, everybody. Yeah, Dr. Halsey is pretty intense. I've only seen her in the games, but reading it sounds like she's pretty stern. Halsey is scary. Yes, I would agree. All right, well, I think tomorrow we're going to be hearing from Turbo Charizard himself. I think he has a chapter or two to read. Look forward to doing this with you guys. Take care.